I'm a narcissist.
Other breaking news. Water. Wet.
She comes off as an insufferable, whiny brat, and that's why people are so annoyed.
There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her.
I hate happy endings.
But you don't have to disparage men in the process.
We absolutely wrote a Snow White.
It's not going to be saved by the prince.
In order to be inclusive, you have to completely destroy storylines.
It's really not about the love story at all, which is really, really wonderful.
It is a colossal disaster.
I will elbow everyone out of the way to play the part.
A real team player.
Talk about biting the hand that feeds you.
It's Hollywood, baby.
Zegler's career now looking like it is seriously on life support.
I was scared of the original cartoon, was terrified of it.
One of the bravest women ever born.
The dwarves are an ungodly nightmare.
It's no longer 1937.
God, you're annoying.
Rachel Zegler's brand deals are reportedly hanging by a thread, and it all exploded the moment The Simpsons unleashed their brutal parody.
HD TV on the wall. Who's the fairest one of all?
Sources close to the situation claim that within hours of the episode airing, major companies began quietly reconsidering their partnerships with Rachel.
I don't need your business. Thanks.
Deals that were once seen as easy wins were suddenly under review. Some brands allegedly even started pulling out altogether, terrified of being associated with the viral backlash now engulfing her image. And if insiders are right, this could be just the beginning of a full-scale collapse.
What would you say to those who are just kind of overly critiquing the film at this point? You've worked so hard on it.
Hold on.
All right.
The Simpsons didn't just mock Snow White, they mocked Rachel personally, portraying her as a self-absorbed, tone-deaf girl boss whose arrogance had driven fans away in droves. Viewers across the country were laughing, memeing, and sharing the parody by the millions. But behind the laughter, real damage was being done.
We've watched as Snow White has been an absolute disaster. We know that Rachel Zegler contributed to it.
Industry whispers suggest that multiple high-profile endorsements tied to Rachel's name are now either frozen or fully canceled. And with each new viral clip of the SnowWoke episode, her brand value is reportedly plummeting even further. Those close to Rachel say she's devastated behind closed doors, furious that a single cartoon could derail years of careful career building. But the cold truth is, this blow didn't come out of nowhere. It was the devastating climax of a controversy months in the making.
Take some of this upon yourself. You don't have to grovel. You don't have to beg, but you screwed up. You were given a golden goose opportunity, and that golden goose is belly up. So what do?
A controversy that Hollywood insiders allegedly warned her could destroy her image if she didn't course correct. And now, with sponsorships in limbo and her reputation hanging by a thread, the question isn't just whether Rachel can recover, it's whether anyone in Hollywood is even willing to bet on her anymore. Long before The Simpsons turned Rachel Zegler into late-night comedy fodder, the warning signs were already flashing bright red. The Snow White project, which should have been a crowning moment in Rachel's young career, was spiraling into a PR nightmare almost from the moment it was announced. What was supposed to be a modern reimagining of a beloved fairy tale quickly became a lightning rod for controversy.
I don't know if that mirror was broken, but that has to be one hell of an acting job by Gal Gadot. She looks into the mirror and she says, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all?" And then they show her a picture of Rachel Zegler, and somehow she has to not burst out laughing.
And Rachel, whether fairly or not, was positioned at the center of the storm. It wasn't the movie's visuals or the music or even the changes to the dwarfs that got people talking. It was Rachel's own words. In interview after interview, Rachel seemed to distance herself from the magic of the original story, calling the 1937 film weird and suggesting that Snow White's prince was a stalker. She proudly proclaimed that the new Snow White would be about leadership, not love. And while Disney executives may have applauded the modern messaging behind closed doors, the public reaction was anything but supportive. Viewers who had grown up adoring the original felt alienated, insulted even, by the suggestion that the classic tale was outdated or problematic. Social media erupted. Every red carpet quote Rachel gave only seemed to add fuel to the fire, painting her less as a fresh face for a new generation, and more as an out-of-touch symbol of Hollywood's worst instincts.
The biggest aspect of disbelief you have to suspend is the idea that Gal Gadot, as the wicked witch here, as the evil stepmother, is somehow less good looking than Rachel Zegler.
That's the dumbest thing I ever heard.
As the backlash grew, ticket pre-sales stalled. Fan enthusiasm cratered, and Rachel's image, once filled with so much promise after her West Side Story breakout, began to fracture. By the time Snow White finally hit theaters, the damage was done. Critics were merciless, audiences stayed away in droves, and the box office numbers were catastrophic. Instead of ushering Rachel into the A-list, Snow White became a cautionary tale. The stage was set. The foundation had already crumbled. All it took was one sharp hit from The Simpsons to bring the whole thing crashing down. And now, with brand deals evaporating, Rachel is paying the price. As the controversy around Rachel Zegler kept snowballing, Disney's once glowing support started to noticeably chill. Insiders claim that behind closed doors, the Mouse House was already having second thoughts about how tightly they wanted their brand tied to Rachel's image. And after The Simpsons aired their savage parody, that hesitation allegedly turned into action.
We're not all blind. We can still see. Gal Gadot is a beautiful person. And Rachel Zegler is a fairly good-looking person.
Sources say Disney began quietly scrubbing Rachel from promotional appearances, pulling her back from interviews, and canceling future media events where she was once slated to be the face of Snow White's rollout. To the public, it looked like Rachel had simply gone silent. But behind the scenes, it was something far more deliberate and far more telling. One insider reportedly put it bluntly, she became a liability overnight. Executives allegedly feared that letting Rachel continue to speak for the film, or any future Disney project, would only pour gasoline on an already raging fire. And when a Disney princess becomes too controversial to promote, the fallout doesn't just stay in-house. Brand partners start asking uncomfortable questions. Sponsorship deals get nervous. Merchandising partners start reconsidering whether they want that face attached to their campaigns. For a company built on safe, family-friendly images, Rachel's growing association with online drama and political firestorms was a risk they could no longer afford to ignore. And it wasn't just corporate caution. There were whispers that some at Disney felt Rachel had fundamentally misunderstood the assignment from the beginning, that instead of embracing the timeless spirit of Snow White, she had tried to burn it down and rebuild it in her own image. Whatever loyalty she once had inside the studio seemed to be evaporating fast. And with her biggest backer growing cold, Rachel wasn't just facing a bad box office haul. She was facing professional exile and a Hollywood machine that, for all its talk of second chances, rarely forgives when you hurt the bottom line.
Because a woman shouldn't have to depend on a man. Snow White was brought back to life by a lady doctor.
And she lived happily ever after?
Well, she couldn't indulge in strenuous activities like handball, but otherwise, she was fine.
If there was any hope that the storm around Rachel Zegler might quietly fade away, The Simpsons buried it. Almost overnight, SnowWoke wasn't just the name of a parody inside an episode, it became the nickname for the entire Snow White disaster. Fans who had been simmering with anger for months suddenly had the perfect punchline to sum it all up. Across TikTok, Twitter, Reddit, you name it, the memes exploded. Edits of Rachel's past interviews were spliced with scenes from The Simpsons' savage reimagining. Hashtags like SnowWoke and Woke White trended non-stop, and with every new viral clip, Rachel's brand took another brutal hit. The parody cut too close to home. It mocked not just the movie's changes, but the very attitude that many critics felt Rachel had brought to the role, one of superiority, disdain, and preachiness. Suddenly, the public wasn't just annoyed at Snow White. They were laughing at Rachel, and laughter, cruel as it sounds, is the one thing even the best PR teams can't spin away. Once the audience is mocking you instead of rooting for you, the battle is already lost, and brands know it. Advertisers started quietly pulling sponsored content, afraid of being memed alongside Rachel's viral downfall. Even longtime industry allies reportedly began distancing themselves, terrified of being caught in the blast radius. It didn't help that footage surfaced of nearly empty theaters at Snow White showings, real, brutal proof that audiences weren't just angry online. They were voting with their wallets too. In a business built on perception, Rachel's star wasn't just dimming, it was in freefall. And no matter how hard her team scrambled behind the scenes, it was becoming painfully clear. Rachel Zegler wasn't just facing a backlash. She was facing a full-blown cultural rejection.
What an idiot I've been as a young person in this industry who has no filter and no idea what she's doing.
While the internet was busy turning Rachel Zegler into the face of SnowWoke, a much quieter, much deadlier battle was unfolding behind closed doors. According to multiple insider leaks, major brand deals that once seemed locked and loaded for Rachel are now teetering on the edge of collapse. Sponsors who had initially been eager to attach themselves to Disney's next supposed breakout star are reportedly freezing their campaigns, pulling scheduled ads, or even reworking their entire marketing plans to remove her image altogether. One source close to the situation didn't mince words. Rachel's name became radioactive almost overnight. Behind the scenes, Rachel's team is allegedly scrambling to contain the fallout, making urgent calls to brand managers, offering reassurances, even proposing revised messaging strategies. But the reality is brutal. In the world of celebrity endorsements, image is everything. And when a star's public persona shifts from inspiring to controversial, from beloved to mocked, sponsors run fast. Companies fear the memes, the headlines, the social media backlash bleeding into their own brand identities. And Rachel, despite her undeniable talent, is suddenly seen as a risk no one wants to gamble millions of dollars on. Deals for beauty campaigns, fashion collaborations, even potential charity partnerships are all rumored to be under review or paused indefinitely. Some industry insiders whisper that certain brands have already quietly cut ties, hoping to avoid any messy public severance announcements. After all, from a business perspective, it's easier to let a contract quietly expire than to explain to your board of directors why you're still backing someone who just got roasted on primetime television by America's longest-running animated sitcom. And as each brand quietly slips away, Rachel isn't just losing endorsements. She's losing the image she spent years carefully crafting, the image of a relatable, empowering, next-generation Disney princess. In a matter of weeks, her career trajectory has gone from meteoric rise to free fall. And the worst part? Some insiders say the industry might already be moving on without her.
Like, who has been the most exciting person for you tonight?
Oh my God.
Besides, took the words out of my mouth. Besides.
Hollywood has a brutal memory, and an even more brutal way of closing ranks when a star becomes toxic. In the days following the Simpsons takedown, the whispers grew louder inside the industry. Rachel Zegler wasn't just facing a PR nightmare, she was being blacklisted from the inner circles that once championed her. Casting directors, agents, and producers who had once touted her as the next big thing were allegedly now quietly pulling her name from consideration lists. Projects that had her attached in early discussions were suddenly going a different direction. Some were even rumored to be fast-tracking replacements to avoid being saddled with the controversy. One producer reportedly summed it up in chilling terms. Nobody wants to be the next studio caught in the crossfire. In Hollywood, perception is survival, and Rachel, once seen as a fresh face ready to lead blockbuster franchises, had become a headline risk no one wanted to inherit. It didn't matter that the Snow White disaster wasn't entirely her fault. It didn't matter that The Simpsons were just one brutal gag in a long history of satire. What mattered was the new narrative, a narrative that painted Rachel as difficult, divisive, and disconnected from the audiences she was supposed to charm. Even worse, the damage wasn't limited to Disney projects. Industry insiders claimed that interest in Rachel for future major studio roles, romantic leads, action heroines, Oscar bait dramas plummeted almost immediately. Some agents, it's rumored, even advised their clients to stay quiet rather than show public support, fearing association with the swirling controversy. Rachel wasn't just facing an uphill battle to save her image. She was now up against the full machinery of Hollywood self-preservation, a machine that knows how to chew up and spit out young stars without a second glance. The message was clear. Fair or not, Rachel Zegler was now seen as a risk. And in a town built on illusion, risk is the one thing no one forgives.
Excuse me, your curtain. Please allow me to help.
Help? From you?
I didn't mean to offend. I just thought you should know that
That I should know what? That some privileged white guy thinks his opinion matters? Get over your entitlement. I'm not some damsel in distress waiting for you to ride in on your high horse.
As the firestorm grew louder, Rachel Zegler did something almost no one expected. She went completely silent. No tweets, no interviews, no carefully worded statements trying to explain or apologize. Just nothing. And in Hollywood, where image management is everything, that kind of sudden vanishing act doesn't happen by accident. Insiders close to the situation allegedly say it was a deliberate move, an emergency damage control strategy designed to pull Rachel out of the blast radius before things got even worse. But others aren't so sure. Some whisper that Rachel's team didn't just tell her to stay quiet, they begged her to. Because every time Rachel had opened her mouth in the past few months, the backlash only grew fiercer. Her words, meant to sound empowering, modern, progressive, kept getting twisted into viral proof that she was out of touch, arrogant, ungrateful. In a world where one wrong soundbite can destroy a career overnight, the safest move was obvious. Say nothing. Let the memes burn out. Hope that public rage moves on to the next scandal. Hide, wait, survive. But but silence comes with its own risks. To her fans, Rachel's vanishing act felt like abandonment. To her critics, it looked like an admission of guilt. And to the brands and studios now deciding her fate, it raised a chilling question. If Rachel Zegler couldn't weather one wave of controversy, how would she survive in an industry that demands constant reinvention under pressure? There's a brutal reality in Hollywood that no one talks about until it's too late. When a star stumbles, it's not always the fall that kills them. It's the silence afterward, the weeks where the world moves on, the offers stop coming, and the spotlight turns ice cold. And unless Rachel finds a way to reclaim her voice, and fast, there's a real chance she could disappear from the A-list before she ever truly arrived. It's almost hard to believe how fast it all unraveled. Just a few short years ago, Zegler was Hollywood's Cinderella story in the making. Plucked from relative obscurity to star in Steven Spielberg's West Side Story, she dazzled audiences and critics alike. Her performance was raw, radiant, and earned her a Golden Globe, an almost unheard of achievement for a newcomer. Disney snatched her up immediately, casting her as the new face of their beloved Snow White franchise. It was supposed to be a dream come true, a new princess for a new generation, a career-defining moment that would launch her into superstardom. But somewhere along the way, the fairy tale twisted.
A time-honored fairy tale beloved by millions, which spans generations, borders, and creeds. What could possibly go wrong? Well, it turned out just about everything.
Instead of celebrating the legacy of the character, Rachel's interviews focused on dismantling it. She spoke candidly, some say carelessly, about how outdated the original Snow White was, how her version wouldn't be dreaming of love, how the prince was a stalker and the story was weird. Maybe she believed she was being bold. Maybe she thought modernizing the fairy tale would win her applause. But outside the Hollywood bubble, the reaction was swift and brutal. To millions of fans, Rachel wasn't just criticizing an old cartoon, she was mocking a piece of their childhoods. And in an industry built on nostalgia, that's an unforgivable sin. The more she tried to explain, the worse it got. Every soundbite became another meme, another headline, another wave of backlash. Rachel's earnest attempts to frame Snow White as a story about empowerment were drowned out by accusations of arrogance and hypocrisy. She wasn't seen as the plucky underdog anymore. She was painted as the symbol of everything audiences were growing tired of. Forced reimaginings, political messaging, stars who seemed to sneer at the very fans they were meant to inspire. By the time Snow White finally limped into theaters, the battle was already lost. And the Simpsons, with their savage SnowWoke parody, didn't create Rachel's downfall. They simply carved it into stone. What should have been Rachel Zegler's fairy tale debut had become a cautionary tale of how quickly Hollywood can turn dreams into dust. If there's one thing Hollywood loves almost as much as a downfall, it's a comeback story. And somewhere, deep inside the wreckage of Rachel Zegler's Snow White disaster, a tiny sliver of hope still flickers. It's not impossible. Stars have come back from worse. Careers once deemed unsalvageable have been rebuilt with one breakout role, one viral redemption moment, one perfectly timed apology tour. The question is, does Rachel have the stomach for it? And more importantly, will anyone in the industry still be willing to bet on her? The path to redemption wouldn't be easy. Insiders suggest it would require a total reinvention, a new project far removed from Snow White, something grounded, humble, maybe even indie. A movie where Rachel could show real vulnerability, raw emotion. Something that reminds audiences why they loved her in the first place back during West Side Story. But even that wouldn't be enough on its own. Rachel would have to play the game she once seemed so eager to reject. That means careful interviews, fewer political landmines, no more mocking the classics that built her career.
People have real problems and no one gives a shit if she got paid for 17 instead of 18 on her multi-million-dollar salary, which is not calculated by the hour.
It means humility, not headlines. Grace, not grievance. And even then, there's no guarantee it would work, because public memory may be short, but the internet never forgets. Every interview clip, every viral meme, every mocking headline is out there forever, ready to be dredged back up the moment she tries to step back into the spotlight. It's a minefield, and one wrong move could trigger another explosion even worse than the first. Still, there's a strange irony at play. In some twisted way, the sheer scale of Rachel's downfall has made her fascinating. People will be watching, waiting, curious if she can claw her way back from being the face of SnowWoke to something new, something bigger, something real. Because if there's one thing everyone agrees on, it's this. Rachel Zegler's story isn't over yet, but how it ends, that's still up for grabs. The Simpsons didn't just mock Rachel Zegler, they sealed her place in pop culture history. Not as the bright young star Disney once promised, not as the inspiring new face of modern fairy tales, but as a cautionary tale frozen in a savage cartoon that will live on far longer than any box office receipts. SnowWoke, the reimagining wasn't just a parody. It was the final blow in a long, brutal unraveling that no publicist, no carefully worded apology, no desperate brand deal could erase. And in that moment, cartoon Rachel lecturing villagers, banning princes, and watching her movie bomb in an empty theater, the real Rachel's fate felt heartbreakingly real. Because once Springfield turns you into a punchline, it's almost impossible to claw your way back. It's not just Rachel's brand deals that are at risk, it's her entire identity in the public eye. The hopeful Cinderella story has shattered. In its place, a new narrative has taken hold, one of arrogance, missteps, and a spectacular fall from grace. And Hollywood, ever hungry for new faces, is already looking elsewhere. New ingenues, new stars, new next big things. The industry that once courted Rachel so eagerly now watches in uncomfortable silence as the dust settles. But here's the thing about fairy tales. They're not just about the princess. They're about the fall and the rise, about losing everything before finding something real. Rachel Zegler still has a choice. She can disappear into the meme graveyard, another viral cautionary tale swallowed by the internet's endless hunger. Or she can fight, rebuild, reclaim the magic in a world that now seems determined to forget it ever existed. What do you think? Can Rachel Zegler pull off the ultimate Hollywood comeback? Or has SnowWoke written the final line of her story? Forever? And if you were in her shoes, would you even want to try? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned, because when you're ready to hear what Hollywood really doesn't want you to know, the next video is already waiting for you.